A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Thank you for tuning in. I'm here in Marrakech. I thank Allah that we, arrived here safely, through our night flight. And I just want to give you a quick look of the Red City. Marrakech is known as the Red City because it's made from the red brick clay and beautiful mountains that I hope to bring you images of soon. Take a look. So, there you have it. This is the view from my hotel room. And again, I hope to bring you more images later on. I chose this spot to talk about the history of Fulani in Morocco because from early times it seems that, according to historians, that the Fulani history begins here in Southern Morocco, which is now known as Marrakech. Even though the real name for this country, Morocco, is Marrakech, not Morocco. Morocco is a name that came about later on. The real name is Marrakech. That's the real name of the country, not just this area in southern Morocco, but in those who know, who are natives here, they still call it Marrakech. In the Arab world, it's called the Maghreb. This country is called the Maghreb because of a prophecy of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and he made a prophecy about the people of the Maghreb, which we won't discuss in this taping. But what we do want to discuss is that in Fulani history, the Fulbhe scholars have traced their history to one Uqba ibn Nafi. And this is what we want to discuss, whether this is a valid tale. Some say it's not a valid tale. Some say that it was something that was used by Fulani scholars and Fulani rulers to justify their leadership over Muslim populations. Now, that is a valid skepticism to think that someone would make up a history to justify their rule over Muslim populations. If anyone is familiar with the way politics work in the Muslim world, usually when people come to power, they will say that they are related to some royal family. This just doesn't happen in the Muslim world. It happens in England and in other countries as well. Their relation to a royal family or royal lineage justifies their rule over the population. And it's the same in the Muslim world. A lot of rulers in the past, particularly not just in Arabia, but in West Africa, would say that they have relation to the family of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, the family of the Christ, and they'll mention a particular companion. Now, back then, in that time, we didn't have the tools available to us that we have today. We didn't have DNA studies that we have available today. And people didn't dig for flora and fauna and the different things that they do today to verify whether a story is true or not. So in order to get a good picture of history, you have to look at, yes, flora and fauna. You have to look at history. You have to look at the language of a people. You look at their behavior, their lifestyle, their culture, and you look at their physique, their physical characteristics. And all of these things will tell you whether they're related to another people who may be in a far, far distant place, or whether these are the people written of in ancient history, whether it's ancient Egypt or the ancient Americas, wherever. If you want to verify or validate whether this is a true history or not, you examine these things. You examine flora, fauna, which is the flower and the bones, and you examine the history, the language, the behavior, the culture, the physical characteristics, and now in today's time, you examine the DNA. So let's just do a quick overview of the story of the Umayyads coming to North Africa. In the 7th century, without going to a whole lot of details, I intend to write about this at a later time to give you more information and go into more details. But right now, this is a live broadcast, and I don't want to take too much of your time. So I'm going to give you a quick overview. In the 7th century, the Umayyads came over to North Africa. They swept across North Africa. And there was one particular general called Uqba ibn Nafi. And Uqba ibn Nafi led his armies all the way across North Africa, all the way to here, which is Southern Morocco, and what is now Marrakech. And he even went further from this point here in Marrakech to a place called Southern Morocco, which is a little bit deeper into Southern Morocco. Now, some say, the Fulani tale is not true because, Uqba ibn Nafi never went far down into Senegal. There's no record that he went far down into Senegal or Mauritania. Okay, we had a little technical problem, little weak signal. But we left off talking about the prototypical Fulani. And what I mean by that is that before Fulbhe people were known as Fulani, they existed here in North Africa. And their migration pattern went from, you could say from southern Morocco to Algeria to southern Libya and all the way to the Sudan and making their way back, according to historical records. In Tasso al-Ajiz, which is in Algeria, there is a painting on a stone which exactly depicts a ceremony called the Lottery. And this was verified by Fulani scholar, Fulbhe scholar, Amadou Hampate Bah, who was initiated into these rituals. So when he saw the painting, he was able to decipher every single movement inside of this painting in southern Algeria, which is east of here. So before the Fulani people, according to historical records, came down to southern Mauritania, Senegal, and began to make their migration from West Africa all the way east to the Sudan and back, they were making migrations up in this area, which is southern Morocco, Algeria, Mauritania. So all of the historical data shows that, yes, the Fulbhe people, the prototypical Fulbhe people before they were called Fulani, were here in this area in southern Morocco, southern Mauritania, Libya, so forth and so on, in North Africa. So so that evidence is clear. So Uqba ibn Nafi, going back to his story, history does document that Uqba ibn Nafi did come to this area here, what is called Marrakech, and to southern Morocco. And it was something very, very interesting that he found here. As you know, the Umayyads were after conquest. And let me just say this briefly. There are a lot of so-called Afrocentric scholars that say that the Arabs came to Africa, and with the sword, they forced people into Islam. And history doesn't validate that point. What it does show that the Umayyads were after empire. They were after conquest. In fact, most of them did not want to convert the populations because it was the non-Muslims that have to pay the tax. And if they converted you to Islam, that means you paid no taxes, which meant their conquest would not be profitable. So they were not interested in converting a whole bunch of people. They were interested in conquest so that they could tax the population, and they were going after taxable populations. North Africa was already a part of Constantinople at one point, in old Roman empires and provinces. So they already had advanced type of civilizations here in Northern Africa, which were old vestiges of Roman civilization, Constantinople, and other civilizations that existed. So when they conquered this area, they had a taxable population. They were not interested in converting sub-Saharan Africans. So anybody who says that, they forced Africans into Islam like the white Christians forced black people into Christianity, not true. There's no evidence of that whatsoever. They were interested in the northern African populations, which were a taxable population. In fact, it was said of Uqba ibn Nafi that he wasn't interested in converting sub-Saharan Africans. He said that these people are worthless. He said, if you convert them with the sword, they'll submit. But once you take the sword away, they'll go back to their old ways. He said, don't waste your time with them. He was more interested in the Berber populations that were here in North Africa, not the sub-Saharan African populations. So, or what is known as the Sudanic populations. So that the people that spread Islam across North Africa is a people that I'm talking about right now, the Fulani. Not North Africa, but West Africa, in particular, Central Africa, and so forth and so on. But going back to Uqba ibn Nafi, when he came to this area of Southern Morocco, he found something that was very precious to him and the companions that he came with. Now, Uqba ibn Nafi comes from a Qurayshi clan. He comes from the Quraysh. And the Quraysh, as you know, is mentioned in the Quran. There's a surah of the Quran named after the Quraysh. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, his family was of the Quraysh. And if Uqba ibn Nafi is indeed the father of the Fulani clan and tribes, then that would make the Fulani a Qurayshi tribe, or a descendant of the Qurayshi tribe. Not that they're 100% Arab. I want to make that clear. Let me say that again. Not that the Fulani are 100% Arab. No. That means they would be of Arab, Berber, and, of course, later on, sub-Saharan African admixture. And this is what we want to examine at this point. Whether Uqba ibn Nafi, the history of Uqba ibn Nafi is true, or is it just a tale that Fulani leaders made up to justify their rulership in the Fulani kingdom of Massina, Futa Toro, Futa Jalan, ancient Takrur, the Sokoto Caliphate, Adamawa, all these vast kingdoms and states that the Fulani have built. We want to examine whether they made up this story in order to justify their rule, or is there true validity to this story? Now, firstly, Uqba ibn Nafi found women in this area of southern Morocco in the 7th century, and history shows, as I said earlier, that the prototypical Fulbhe people were here in southern Morocco during that 7th century early period. And he said he found women that he'd never seen, unlike women he's ever seen in any part of the Berber territories he has went to. And And he was so fascinated by these women. Of course, he took a woman for himself. And the Arabs took these women back to Saudi Arabia. One of these women is the mother of Ahmed al-Mansur, who is the founder of Baghdad, and he is the founder of the Abbasid Caliphate. He is the son of Ibn Abbas, and his mother was a woman from here in southern Morocco, whom I believe is a Fulani woman. And I'm going to tell you why I believe that it's a Fulani woman. The Fulani woman is legend here in West Africa. I could give you many instances. For instance, the Dogon Tribe. The Dogon Tribe are the ones that discovered Sirius A, Sirius B, Sirius C. You can look them up. And in their ceremony, because the Fulani women are such legends in West Africa, at the beginning of their ceremony, in order to mock this legend, the man at the front of the parade dresses up as a Fulani woman. And this is one of their major ceremonies that they do, I believe, every 50 years. But even though they're not Fulani, but because of the legend of the beauty of the Fulani woman, they actually, the man put on a mask that and wears that symbolized the hairstyle of the Fulani woman. During the reign of Sunni Ali, they specifically targeted the Fulani women and kidnapped them in order to give them to members of his rulers and cabinet. This has been a plight of Fulani women throughout history. In France, the legend of Fulani women, they have a woman called the Pale Princess, who was the top model in France. And you know, in America, when somebody gets rich, they want to go and get a white woman. But you find a lot of white men in France, when they get rich, they want them a Fulani woman. This is the legend of the beauty of Fulani women. A lot of the beauty pageants in West Africa are won by Fulani women. Even in recent times, Dominique Strauss-Kahn, the billionaire Frenchman, the incident at the hotel in New York City, where he had to pay off $6 million to a Fulani woman for trying to rape a Fulani woman. The brother in the Bronx had to kill somebody for trying to rape his Fulani wife. This is the plight, what they call the blessing and the curse of beauty of the Fulani woman. So throughout history, you find this legend of the beauty of Fulani women. So there's no doubt in my mind that these women that Uqba ibn Nafi found were, in fact, Fulani women here in southern Morocco, which makes the Abbasid, the founder of the Abbasid Empire, Ahmed al-Mansur, the son of our mother. As Musa said to Aaron, "Oh, son of my mother." That makes him the son of a Fulani mother. So let's go into some critical, concrete data at this point in the presentation to tie whether this story is true or just something made up. So according to Fulani legend, Uqba ibn Nafi had sons from one Ba Jo, which I think that would make her a Ba. Ba Jo Mongo. So in a recent study on the DNA of Saudi Arabians, and this study was funded by King Faisal, and it was conducted by the Spain Ministry of Education and Science. And it's called the Eurasian and African Mitochondrial DNA Influences in the Saudi Arabian Population. Now, when they did this study, they found that, of course, the Saudi Arabian population are related to Africans, but they're related mostly to East Africans, which is understandable because, you know, Ethiopia is right across the water from Saudi Arabia. Somalia is right across the water from Saudi Arabia. Mozambique is right there on the east coast of Africa, right across the water from Saudi Arabia. And so it's understandable and very easy to conceive that, okay, Saudi Arabians will be related to Africans on the east coast of Africa. That's a no-brainer. But they found something interesting in their report, in their DNA of their study of the Saudi Arabian DNA, that there was one group from the west coast of Africa that was related to the Saudi Arabian population. And that group was West African Guineans. West African Guineans. Out of all the Africans on the west coast, it was these West African Guineans from the country of Guinea that was related to the population of Saudi Arabia. Now, that was one study done. In a separate study on the West African population of Guinea. Now, first of all, they just mentioned in the Saudi Arabian study, the study of the Saudi Arabian people, that they were related to West African Guineans, but they didn't say which group of West African Guineans. They just generalized it as West African Guineans. But there was a more specific study done separately by the University of Madeira, I don't know if I'm pronouncing this right, Madeira in Portugal, and the Tutu University in Estonia. So mind you, these are not Fulani people doing these studies. This is not Brother Elijah doing these studies and to justify anything, or Fulani people. These are, basically universities in Europe doing these studies. And one study was done on behalf of Saudi Arabia, on behalf of King Faisal, who wanted to know the DNA of the Saudi Arabian population. This study that was done by the University of Madeira in Portugal and Tutu University in Estonia is called Towards a Better Understanding of Senegambia. And this is what they found. They found that the Fula had not one, but two haplotypes. Two haplotypes that match the people of Saudi Arabia. So they said the Fula haplotype GB39, G as in God, B as in brother, 39, GB39 has not been reported anywhere in West Africa, but appears in East Africa, Lake Turkana, Nubia. As I said earlier, the migration between Morocco, Algeria, Libya, Egypt, from east to west, East Africa, Lake Turkana, Nubia, South Sudan, Ethiopia, and Saudi Arabia. So out of the West African Guineans, it's only the Fulbhe people who have this clear genetic relation to the people of Saudi Arabia. It says this other haplotype, also the Fula haplotype, GB, God, brother, GB 178, shared exact match, as they put it, exact match with sequences in East Africa, Somalia, Egypt, and even Saudi Arabia. And as you know, a lot of Fula people get confused with Ethiopians and Somalians. And they even have relation to the people of Saudi Arabia. Two haplotypes in the admixture of Fulbhe have relation to Saudi Arabia. Now again, I want to make this clear. Fula people are not full-blooded Arabs. A brother wrote me on YouTube the other day, a Fulani brother from Guinea. He said he did his DNA. He's yet they so. And he said that his DNA is North Africa, which is here. This is North Africa where I am now. Middle East, Saudi Arabia, and West Africa. That's what makes a Fulani who they are. That is standard Fulani DNA, along with another DNA that's found with the nomadic people, which is R1b, which is also found in Europe. I discussed that in my other video on YouTube called the Origin of the Red-Bone People, the Fulani Origins of the Red-Bone People. But settled Fulani have those three elements, and that's what makes them who they are. So let me continue on. So you have this DNA evidence that strongly supports that yes, there is a connection between the Arab populations and the Fulani people. Let's go further. Let's go into, we discussed history, check. We discussed DNA, check. I have my little list here. And now let's discuss language. Before I started studying the Pula language, I studied Arabic first. Arabic was the language I studied before I studied Pula. So I had a pretty considerable amount of vocabulary in Arabic. When I began to study the Pula language, I noticed that, wait a second, a lot of these words are Arabic words. They were Africanized Arabic words. So when you come from a people, you're going to keep some of your old language, and it's going to be meshed with another language. There are also Berber words found in the Fula language, but it's largely a lot of Arabic words in the Fulani language. The Berber words, like the number Tetmedeh. Going back to the point of the Fula women, let me just go back a second. The Berber woman here of North Africa and the Fula woman, the similarity in their headdress is exactly the same. They have the beautiful coins that they put and so forth. What I also found in my study of textiles is that the Berber woman, their head wrap is called a futa. A futa. And, just like we say a hood, if I put a hood on, we also call our community a hood, a neighborhood. Hood also means what surrounds your head in language, what surrounds your head. That's why it's a hood, you see? And your surrounding community is also a hood. That's why it's called neighborhood. So the Berber women call it a futa. And in the Fulani tradition, they call their community futa. That's why it's called futa Jalan, futa Toro. You see, and this is the same in the language of the Berber woman here in North Africa. What I also found out, and it shocked me the first time not the first time, but one of the first times I stayed here for, more than a layover flight, a couple of days or so. And I ran into a Marrakechi, and I said, how do y'all greet each other? And he said, Tanala Lonk. And my eyes nearly popped out of my head. I said, say that one more time. He said, Tanala Lonk. The Fulani, the Fulbhe, greet each other, Tanala Tone. Exactly the same. Lonk means there, tone means there. Is there no evil there? Same exact greeting as the people here, right here in Marrakech, the Berber people in particular, or they call them the native people, the original people, the Marrakechi. They greet Tanala Lonk, which is the same as the language of the Fulani, Tanala Tone. We're discussing language. So the DNA of North Africa, Saudi Arabia, and West Africa coincides with the Fulbhe people, the Fulani people, as well as the language. When the Fulani were forced down, and again, going back to the point of the women, they were here in Southern Morocco. The Fulani people, not just the women, the men and the women, they were here in Southern Morocco. But when this incident, when they started kidnapping the women and bringing them to Saudi Arabia, of course, who wants to hang around for that, right? Same thing, if somebody's coming, they know where you are, They're sending armies to raid to capture your women. Are you going to stay there and wait for them to come again? No. Get up on out of there. So if you look at a map, you see Morocco, and beneath Morocco on the west coast of Africa, you see Mauritania, and then Mauritania you see Senegal. And that is where you find the origins of what is called today Fulani or Fulbhe people. Right there in southern Mauritania, Senegal, they left. There was a lot of things going on in North Africa. There was a lot of conflict between the Berbers and the Arab populations in terms of sharing power and that type of thing, which I don't have time to get into at this moment, but because I want to stick to the point of Fulbhe people. But it's these conflicts and this kidnapping that pushed the prototypical Fulbhe people down from here in southern Morocco all the way down into Mauritania and Senegal. And because the Arabs did not come down that far, no, they did not. The Fulani, who had accepted Islam early on, they probably accepted Islam during the Umayyad period. But because of the conflict between the Berbers and the Arabs, they left and they set up the ancient Takrur kingdom in southern Mauritania and Senegal because they were out of the purview and the influence of the Arab populations of the north, and they were able to set up a Islamic community in sub-Saharan Africa, or on the borders of sub-Saharan Africa, where North Africa and sub-Saharan Africa meet, which is Mauritania, Senegal. And it's the ancient Takrur kingdom, which is an old Fulani kingdom by historical records, historical accounts. And it was there they met a people, they came in contact with a people called the Serre people, and their language, the Fulani language is, you know, it has the Arabic element, it has the West African element, the way it is spoken, the way the pronouns are, which also has relation to the ancient Egyptian language as well. There was a study done on that. And it has the Arabic elements. So all of these things point to that admixture of, again, North Africa, Arab, North Africa, and Sub-Saharan Africa. This is what makes the Fulbhe. They're related to all three of these peoples, and the nomadic populations with that R1B1, which is the father of European people. So I think I made the point on language, and I just want to move now into behavior and culture. I'm going to check off language on my list. Behavior, lifestyle, and culture. And towards that, I want to read something from a book called Pastoralism Under Pressure. It was a study done on Fulbhe people by many scholars, about a dozen scholars have writings in this book, and it's all about Fulbhe pastoralists. And this particular chapter was written by one scholar named Roger Blench and the title of his chapter, I believe, I didn't write it down, but if I remember correctly, it's Why Are There So Many Pastoral Groups in East Africa? So he did a comparative study. That's my chair, by the way. He did a comparative study of Fulbhe people and East African tribes. And he noticed a distinct difference between Fulbhe population and East African pastoral populations. So I'm going to read exactly from his observations and what he says. He said, a distinctive feature of Fulbhe social structure, which has no parallel in East Africa, but which strongly resembles the Arab world of the Middle East, is the existence of a strong urban/rural cultural divide with a constant potential for flow between the two, meaning there's a flow between the rural people and the urban people. This particularly true in East Africa, where the strong association between Nilotic and Cushitic speakers with pastoralism contrasts with cultivators who are usually Bantu speaking. So what he observed from studying these many pastoral populations in East Africa, he noticed that the pastors, those who herd cattle in East Africa, generally speak one language, generally have one type of culture, and the urban or settled populations who are farmers and cultivators are Bantu speaking. Now, there's always a relation between the pastors and the cultivators. The cows get their dung and so forth and so on, and they give them their crops, and there's this exchange. But in East Africa, generally, the cultivators are Bantu speakers, and there's they are of a total different culture, total different language, and the pastors are of a total different language, total different culture, total different physique. Said by contrast, in the Middle East, Bedouin, which are, Bedouin in Arabia means nomads, Bedouin and settled rural and urban populations share the same language and numerous cultural values. So in the Middle East, the Bedouin, the nomads, and the rural or urban population, they share the same cultural values. Indeed, most urban Arabs consider the Bedouin or the nomad the repository of true Arab values. Hence the popularity of nomadic images in towns, sitting rooms decorated as tents like the nomads, and restaurants mimicking nomadic dwellings. There's a constant flow between the urban and nomadic populations. And he said this is exactly the same type of cultural setup he sees with Fulani people. So again, the DNA, the language, the lifestyle all shows traces to, of course, West African, North African, Nubia, Algeria, Libya, Southern Libya, the Berber populations, and the Saudi Arabian populations. It's very, very clear. None of this can happen by accident. A lot of you think, people accidentally look like each other. People accidentally have the same behavior. People accidentally speak the same language on this side of the world as that side. These are not accidents in history. There is a correlation, there's relation, and there are certain facts that shows that these people were once in contact with each other, and these people that were once the same people that separated at some point. And you see this parallel, the same that mirrors Arab culture, whereas no matter how high a Fulani gets, he still ties himself to that nomad. And the same way the Arab sees the nomad as the true repository of Arab cultures, the Fulani sees their nomads as the true Fulani. Pulo tiki tiki tiki, the true Fulani is the nomad. And you'll see the president of Senegal, for instance, Macky Sall. You'll see him in a photo coming out of a pseudo hudo, a traditional Fulani hut, to show that he's still a Pulo. You'll see him promoting the Pula language around the world, financing the promotion of Pula language all around the world, because that's his roots. So no matter how high he gets, he still identifies with the nomads. You see the president of Nigeria. He boasts about his his Fulani upbringing in the bush. The current president of Nigeria, and he has 500 cows, which is Fulani culture. He doesn't get away from his cows. He said he's not comfortable unless he's around cows, which means that he, no matter how high he gets, he still identifies with the nomad. This is exactly the same in Arab culture. The nomads are seen as the purest of the Arab people, And with the Fulani, the nomads are seen as the purest of the Fulani people. Regularly, settled Fulani people, urban Fulani people, will have ceremonies. And in these ceremonies, they'll dress up like the nomads. I was at one in Harlem the other day, and they had a cow, a fixture of a cow on the stage, and they were pretending to milk. The women were pretending to milk the cow, and they were dressed like the traditional Fulani women. And these are urban Fulani. These are settled Fulani, but they still honor the nomadic culture of their ancestors because they see that as the purest of Fulani, exactly as it is in Arab culture. So all of these things, the culture, the language, the history, the physical characteristics in relation. If you could go to my page, I'll post a picture. If you look at some of the Berbers here, the Marrakechi people, you can't tell some of them apart from the Fulani people. It's the same with certain East African groups because you can't tell them apart. So everything is very clear. And again, none of these things happen by accident. There's no such thing as accidents. For those of you who don't know who Uqba ibn Nafi is, particularly those my brothers and sisters in the Nation of Islam, I first learned about Uqba ibn Nafi not by name, but through the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad in the book called Theology of Time, or the lecture series that was turned into a book, the lecture series. And if you may remember this, if you study his teachings, that he mentioned a general who rode his horse all the way into the Atlantic Ocean. And he said, if it wasn't for this ocean, I would take this deen all the way across the water to the other side. And that general is Uqba ibn Nafi. And it's Uqba ibn Nafi who the Fulani traced their history to, the one that rode his horse all the way to the Atlantic Ocean, which is on the other side of America, where I am now. Well, I'm not in the Atlantic Ocean, but I'm on the other side of the Atlantic Ocean. If you look hard from Brooklyn, you can see me. Don't do that. Don't do that. Okay, so I think that concludes it. If you have any questions, I'll do a part 3. If you have questions or anything about this topic, and if there's anything you think I missed, you're welcome to bring it to my attention. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm honored. I'm really honored by anyone who takes their time to listen to this research, because I do this research to share the information and to get it to the people. So when people take the time to listen to it, I am greatly and deeply appreciative, honestly. Thank you so much for listening. May Allah bless you. Assalamu alaikum. On Jarama.